I actually really don't have the answer, but one of the things that I'm sure is that there's a lot of optimism on the Trump side that the Chinese are going to be the one that have to blink because their economy is not booming, and I would not count on it. I mean, there's legislative pressure in the U.S. heading to the midterms that legislators who are going to be on the ballot are feeling. And there are a lot of people concerned about the hit to the economy that may come into effect and how much it will wipe out some of the benefit, really great benefit of tax reform. There's a lot of pressure mounting. China is an authoritarian government. I suspect this legislative pressure doesn't exist there. So I think the optimism on the Trump administration side that, you know, they will, China will blink first is overrated. And by the way, the country that blinks the first is the one that will actually be doing the right thing by its people, because tariffs imposed by a country hurt their own people.
Mattie, the U.S. stock market's up this week, but the Chinese stock market does appear to have blinked. The Shenzhen's down about 8%. That's retail investors here. But I wonder about the political pressure here in the United States. A lot of Republicans are not exactly behind President Trump, at least in this approach to the China tariff issue. And might he be under some very serious pressure, particularly with the midterms coming up?
Yeah, Bob, I agree with both your sentiments and with Veronique's there that tariffs are taxes on our own consumers, and they're extremely problematic and they create political pressure. However, I think there are two developments this past week that really bear emphasis when it comes to debating what's going to happen with China and the United States. One is the fact that Congress passed reforms to CFIUS, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. This is the body that is actually in charge of a lot of the threats that the administration has claimed have been one of the motivating factors for them levying all of these tariffs on Chinese goods. That's intellectual property theft, forced tech transfers. Those sorts of concerns are things that CFIUS is supposed to be reviewing. Congress has passed legislation now that goes to the president's desk to sign that would strengthen a lot of the faculties that body has. Secondly, I think last week that meeting between EU Commissioner Juncker and Donald Trump was very informative, not only because having some sort of deal, or at least lessening of tensions with the EU, increases pressure on our other trading partners that we are certainly negotiating with at the time, but also because it really will bolster the spine of the Trump administration, thinking that tariffs are the threat that can get the job done. So I think both those developments really do augur a lot more pressure on China now.
Evan?
Yeah. The question I have is more generally, which is, if you look at the month of August, you have a whole series of things that are going to go on here. You have the NAFTA negotiations. You have negotiations or discussions going on with North Korea. You have the situation with Iran and the Iranian sanctions. And in the middle of all this, you have a potential China-U.S. trade war. And so if you're the Trump administration, this month of August means not just getting the China-U.S. equation right, but it's somehow dealing with all these other balls. So it's really like juggling 4 or 5 balls at once. And to me, that is the real question, which is, to what extent does the China issue take paramount importance, and to what extent do these other issues become more important?
But I think she brought up a very good point, that the Juncker negotiations might have
but it was a fudge.
The spine of the president.
But it was a fudge, Bob. You know, they didn't agree on anything. It was a fudge. It was a fudge basically saying, we'll deal with China first, and then we'll deal with Europe later.
Yeah, but Evan, the point that you're making is a stability question. What is it that wrings the most stability out of our political process right now? I would argue that having some lessening of tensions with the EU, which was a huge question mark, not only for both the economies here, but for the political questions that certainly lawmakers are facing heading into the midterms. But you know what that does to give us a little bit of sense of what the Trump administration will pursue next. I think this, more than anything else, indicates that the Trump administration will certainly feel that their threat in tariffs work. So I think that when considering what's going to happen next with any trade negotiation, we need to consider that the administration has been given a pretty clear signal that their tactics seem to be a positive path forward.
We've got to leave it there. It's a great debate.
If I can...
Yeah, final word quickly, Veronique.
I mean, actually, it really doesn't work. The European Union has only agreed to negotiate. The only people I've seen blink so far is the Trump administration. They caved on ZET and on the restriction of investment, and they've also agreed to suspend potential tariffs on auto. it doesn't work. The Europeans are punning. I have not seen anyone so far agree to the terms of the Trump administration. Period. So I actually
Yeah, I
think
know. I
it
think
has
we'll see
never
what
worked in
happens
the
from it,
past.
but
So
yeah, Vero, my
may
point
not have a
simply is that
deal,
the
but-
Trump administration thinks it works, and that's the important part when we're trying to handicap what it does next.
yeah, maybe.